Welcome to Promote, Profit, Publish. I'm so excited to have you here today, as I always am. I know I always say that, but I really mean it. Want to invite you to go over to YouTube and follow us over on Super Brand Publishing. And also, you're here, you're listening. Go write us a review. We'd love to hear from you and find out how much you're liking the show, or even drop us a note and tell us, if there's something you want to hear that we haven't covered yet. So today's guest is Hernan Sias. Did I say that right?
Sias.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. I should have asked before we got on the phone. And Hernan, I actually ran into him over on LinkedIn. He's an entrepreneur and a podcaster who's helping people take control of their branding and marketing through the power of podcasting so they can create wealth today and generational wealth tomorrow. And he actually does his podcast 5 days a week, which I think is pretty incredible. I have a hard time getting one a week done. But he also has a day job where he does something pretty significant as well. So we'll get into that a little. So welcome.
Thank you. Super excited to be here. I'm ready to rock and roll this one.
Great. So podcasting 5 days a week. Why?
So it sounds crazy, but my thoughts when I first got into podcasting, you see, I'm not a big fan of prospecting the traditional way. I had a real estate license. I still have my real estate license, and I got it because we were flipping properties. And then I moved into actual representation, and I was like, okay, I'm going to give this a shot, see how it works. And the most hideous part is trying to reach out to people who don't want to talk to you. They may or may not have an interest. They just don't really want to talk to you. They don't know you. They don't, trust you at all. So most of the prospecting calls I ever got was, ended in a no. I was listening to people like Gary Vee. I was listening to my real estate coach, and they were both saying things like, you need to start a podcast. And I didn't know, other than for what? So people can hear my voice. Like, I don't even like my voice. Right. But I decided to get into podcasting. And when I do something, I try to look at people who are doing a good job at it and kind of follow what they're doing. And so the top podcasting name that I could come up with was Joe Rogan. And I looked over at Joe Rogan. I'm like, this guy's got millions of followers. People admire what he does. It's incredible. He has over 1,000 episodes. And so my mind, weirdly, naturally, since I'm a numbers guy, I was like, oh, how quick can I get to 1,000 episodes? So I was like, okay, well, if I do this for 3 years and I do it 5 days a week, I should be able to get to my 1,000 episodes relatively quickly. And so, that was the thought behind it. There was no other strategic avenue other than put more content out, stay in front of your circle of influence, and become that thought leader in your industry. And so far it's been working. I mean, I have a brand, people recognize it. I wear my shirt around town and people are like, hey, I seen that before. And I'm like, yeah, what's up? Let me, and people come and talk to me and ask me questions versus me trying to go out and convince people to work with me. It's been a complete dynamic paradigm shift.
That is so true. You and I met over on LinkedIn, and I actually reach out to do pod swaps. I prefer that versus people coming and asking to be on my show. And the reason for that is because I get to meet a lot of really great people. Some of them fit, some of them don't for the show. But at the end of the day, I'm talking to a tremendous number of people every week. And I imagine you are too, because we connected there.
Absolutely. And it's still prospecting, right? You're still in business. So no matter what you do, you can try to avoid the whole prospecting, analogy. You can try to change it to call it communicating or shaking hands or whatever you want to call it, but it's still prospecting. You have to get in front of people, tell them what it is you do, and build and establish those relationships. Otherwise, nobody's going to do business with you. It's just a fact. It's just the way it works. So you can call it whatever you want to call it. How are you going to meet somebody new every single day? And the beauty of doing the podcast is instead of coming with, hey, I have this house to sell. Do you think you'd be interested in buying it? It's more like, hey, you know what? I have this show. I want to talk about you, Mr. and Mrs. Prospect. Would you be willing to come on my show and tell me your story, your trials, your tribulations? And then, you know what? At the end, I'm going to create some content pieces and I'll give them to you so you can use on your Instagram and your Facebook and continue to promote. You're bringing value right up front. And so, of course, people are going to want to say yes to that. And it's fun. I mean, this is a much less stressful environment to meet people and talk to people every single day. I mean, I don't know about you, but my calendar gets filled with just Zoom calls. And before we would call them conversations, now we're just calling them podcasts because it's a little bit different. It's like you used to go to trainings, and then you went to master classes, and now we're going to webinars, right? Like, it doesn't matter what you call it. They're all networking events. They're all meeting people. It's just how you use that whatever title to push you in the direction to continue to prospect, to continue to meet people.
That's so true. But I think podcasting is different in the sense of, well, a couple things. First of all, you were in real estate. I was in real estate. We both know the only people who do well in real estate are the ones that prospect. And most people avoid it like the plague. They're afraid to talk to people. But secondly, I think when you have a masterclass or a webinar, you're inviting people to listen to you talk, but you're not really talking to them. With the podcasting, like you and I talked for an hour just about what we do, how we do it, why the podcasting. And I think that is a more significant way to do things than those other ways. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, 100%. So podcasting itself is just the beginning of the conversation, right? It's you opening the door to sit with somebody to hear their story. What I try to tell people why podcasting is so powerful. Think about this. If there was a way for you to stand on the corner and grab a megaphone and yell out to people, hey, I do this business, come work with me, eventually people are going to listen to you, right? But you do have to take a break, and eventually your throat gets sore, and the cops might come if you're hollering at 11 o'clock at night, right? When you create a podcast episode, this is you in your own voice and your own enthusiasm, as passionate as you can be behind your product or service, living on the internet 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, completely searchable. You can take that same podcast and you can create small pieces, and it's still you talking about your content 24 hours a day, showing up on Instagram feeds, Facebook, LinkedIn, all that stuff. You can transcribe it and turn it into a blog, and now it's searchable content for Google to find you also. And it's you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you hired somebody to market for you, you'd have to pay them a salary, and they're only going to work certain hours because after that, they'll sue you. Right? So, but these clips, these are you. This is your power out there talking about what it is you do. And even if people don't listen to every single episode or don't listen to every single content piece, they see you over and over again, and you're literally a face that they'll recognize. So when you do offer a product or service, or you do meet them in public, or you do meet them at school or wherever it is, they absolutely recognize you and have a good idea of what it is that you do.
That is so true. So I'm gonna liken that what he just said. Back when I was in real estate, I used to have a billboard, and I was always amazed when people walk in the store like, "You look really familiar." I go, "Yeah, I'm up on New Hall Ranch Road." It's the same thing with the podcasting. So not only is there that strategy to have your podcast out every day, but I'm constantly on other people's podcasts. So it's not just me promoting myself. Like just this morning, I promoted somebody else's show I was on. And so there's a swap there as well when you keep promoting other people.
And it's all about growing that circle of influence. When I told you at the beginning, I got into this and I looked at somebody successful like Joe Rogan. The problem with most people, and the reason why they quit podcasting, do you know there's like less than 1 million podcasts out there compared to like the 31 million YouTube channels, right? And half of the podcasts that are out there have less than 14 episodes. And the reason why most people quit is because nobody's listening at first, or they don't get the exact numbers that they're looking for. They're trying to put 1 or 2 episodes and become Joe Rogan in like the first couple episodes, and it doesn't work. But you need to look at it as you have a certain small circle of influence already. You have friends and family. I mean, I come from a Mexican family, so we have a lot of aunts and uncles and lots of cousins, right? And I, in my own immediate family, have a general idea of what my relatives do. I don't exactly know. I know maybe that we're in construction. I know maybe, I don't know, he does something along the lines of money or works in cars. I don't know exactly because nobody talks about it. Right? If you don't know that amongst your own closest people, your own friend, your own family members, how do you expect anybody else to know what you do? The only way you can do that is by telling them. And so, understand that when you first get started in podcasting, you're right. Not very many people are going to listen to you. But as you bring guests on, some of their audience is going to like you and resonate with your personality type, and they're going to stick around and want to listen to your show more often. And as you go on other people's podcasts, their audience is also going to, some of them are going to like you. They're going to come back and follow you and watch your stuff.
Mhm.
We've been at it almost 2 years, and I failed to start a Facebook group until about a year ago, right? It took me a while because I didn't know those things were there and I didn't know how to use them. I had to figure it out. But we've built a following of over 7,000, almost 7,500 people on our Facebook group, doing exactly that, bringing a guest on, inviting their friends and family to be part of the show, giving them the content, showing it live. And little by little, these people are coming on and they're following and they're liking the messages. And when we repurpose content, they're feeling like they connect. And it just takes that little bit at a time. It's like that snowball effect, right? It's hard to get that ball rolling at first, but after a while, it's just going to come tumbling down the hill. And it's like that with any sales position out there. When you first get started in sales, you know nobody and nobody knows you. Just because you got a license doesn't mean people are going to come flocking to you to buy and sell their house. It doesn't work that way. You have to start planting the seeds. And after a while, if you plant a lot of seeds, you will have a great harvest. But it takes planting the seed, nurturing the seeds, taking care, tendering the crop, and then eventually you get there. It doesn't come overnight. So, but don't fall off just because you planted the seeds and 2 days later you don't have a tree. It doesn't work that way.
That is so, so true. And I remember when I started real estate, I actually I day one hit the ground with an ad budget, and I borrowed listings from people in my company. And within a month, I had listings of my own. You have to be creative in that way. Just like you're saying, you have to get your face out there. You have to get to know people. So that thing that he was mentioning where people podcast and they stop is actually called pod fading. And there's a lot of that out there where people will, less than 14 episodes and they give up. Now, here's the one thing, though, that people have to remember about podcasting. It's bingeable. So when you find I don't know about you, but when I find somebody I like, I'll download like the whole gamut of episodes and listen while I'm running or while I'm in the car. So it's not just a one-off.
No, it's not. And here's what I try to explain to people. I'm like, if you guys growing up, for me anyways, there would be our summers and we'd be at home and we'd try to watch TV, and all the TV in the daytime, it sucks, right? You always watch Friends in the afternoon, on Thursdays in the evening, that sort of stuff. But during the day, all you could find is like People's Court and Judge Judy. Like there was nothing else on, right? However, I knew what Judge Judy was. I knew who she was. I knew her personality type. Her brand was established during that middle time. And that's, when you talk about binging and content, like I might not be the number one show on your podcast list, but I'm probably somewhere in that top like 10, maybe somewhere around 7, 8, 9, whatever. But guess what? When you run out of that show that puts out an episode once a week or once a month, you drop down to the next show and the next show. And guess what? I'm the Judge Judy in podcasting. You're going to find my stuff all the time. It will be there. You'll never be able to catch up to all my episodes because we have over 440 episodes already out. Like you can try to binge in. That's okay. Do I expect you to listen to my show every single week? I don't. Mom will. My mom will. That's what moms do, right? They're super supportive. But everybody else, you're going to catch me as an extra until I connect with you on a personal level. Then I'm going to rise on the ranks just a little bit, right? But that's my intent, is to be, you can be the Judge Judy of the show and be ultra successful because you're constantly putting out content.
Yeah, that is so true. That also, when you transcribe, makes you more searchable online. Especially a 20 to 30-minute podcast is going to yield you more than 6,000 words. And those are the searchable criteria that makes you indexable on those search engines. So lots of different ways you can use all that.
And there's a nice little cheat to transcribing, by the way.
Ooh.
Google Voice. I mean, you can use a Google document, use it on your phone and just open it up and, have it playing and it will transcribe everything that's being said like right over. When you create a Facebook post, the voice to word systems have gotten way better over time. I remember when I was a kid trying to do that. Well, I'm not a kid because internet wasn't around then, But but maybe like 10, 15 years ago, they had certain programs where you try to do speech to text and it wasn't that great. Now everything gets pulled over really quick. I can create subtitles on my posts on Facebook in mere seconds and it's accurate. And that's something that Google and the internet, from all of us just sharing so much content on a regular basis, that AI is getting smarter and smarter and smarter. It's understanding accents and dialects and all that stuff and placing the wording in the right spot. And it doesn't take much effort. Is it a perfect, edited paper that you come out of English class with an A plus? Probably not, but it does the bulk of the work for you. You can go through and kind of read and fix a couple of things. And remember, perfect is the enemy of done. The fact that you have it transcribed and it's ready to go and you can post it on your blog, you're pretty much light years ahead of anybody else who hasn't created a blog in the first place or has the written content to put in. So stop worrying about the perfection part and start worrying about the completion part, and you'll get where you want to go, just being out there and trying to take advantage of that, the modern technology that's there.
That is so true, because I used to, probably back in 2012, 2013, I actually had a blog, and it was hard to get motivated to write that thing every week and even get ahead. So, this is, if you're someone who talks, it's an excellent way. I actually tell people, you can write your books that way as well. If you have a good outline, open up, like you're in the car, you're in San Diego, right? So San Diego, a lot of traffic, have that outline in your car and open up and record right there to transcribe. So you're in good shape.
Talk to it.
Yeah. So I want to get off podcast for a minute, because I think what you do out in your job world is a really important thing as well. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think financial literacy is really important.
It's huge. So I teach high school seniors. I have a teaching credential in mathematics, and I spent a few years teaching, algebra and geometry, that sort of stuff. And then but the reason why I got into teaching is because I wanted to take what I'm learning in business and apply it to a high school level, to those kids that probably are not going to go to college. Give them the opportunity to have the financial the language behind them, to understand a little bit about how a cash flow statement works, know how to buy a house, know how to buy a car, use that vocabulary to put themselves in a position to succeed. And then about 5 years ago, school was going to offer that course. And I was like, nobody wanted to teach it, because nobody wants to teach the kids that are probably they've been struggling in math their whole life, right? They haven't been doing so well. This is their opportunity to get a math credit to graduate. So when it comes to the education system, they're the bottom of the barrel when it comes to mathematics skills. But when that course came up and nobody wanted to teach it, my hand was already in the air, like me, that's my course right there. I want to teach that course. And so, so I did, and I've been taking it on for the last 5 years or so, and it's been a fun thing. I mean, my kids get to do things like start a business. This year we were working on creating sales funnels online, and they come up with some crazy, bizarre idea when it comes to their businesses, but it doesn't really matter that it's a bizarre, crazy idea. It's okay. How do we start to implement the steps to get there? And let them discover that their idea is really far-fetched, or that their idea is attainable. And I just didn't see that it was attainable at their age. You know what I mean? Whatever it is, give them the necessary skills and the opportunity to go out and do these things. And it's been a fun ride. So, I've leaned back on the math. I'm not so big on, y equals mx plus b. And I'm more focused on the concept of what literacy is. So, I tell them the most complicated thing we're going to do in this math class is we're going to add and subtract, but we're going to add and subtract in like a general ledger. We're going to add and subtract in like, principal and interest. That's not true. We do some compounding stuff because, there's the whole compound interest type stuff. But, it's add, subtract, multiply, and divide. There's nothing super complicated or crazy when it comes to math. But I really want you to learn this vocabulary, right? Vocabulary to me is huge. I know it's a math class. I completely get it. You're expecting to do big numbers. But if you don't speak the language that finance people speak, it doesn't matter what numbers they're not going to make any sense. It's like going to the doctor and sitting there and trying to listen to doctors speak, right? I mean, they have their own language. I remember sitting at the dentist office, my mouth is open. The dentist is talking to the assistant, talking about numbers and letters in my mouth. I don't know what the heck she's saying, but they completely understand each other, right? They know exactly what they're talking about. And then that's the problem that most people experience when they sit down with their tax preparer. The tax preparer is talking to them in taxes, right? Well, we have to go to your Schedule C. We have to make sure that your net is okay. And whatever your net is, that's where you're going to pay self-employment tax. That's it. You lost the person sitting in front of you because they don't speak taxes. You go sit down with your accountant, same type of thing. Well, earnings before tax, earnings before interest and taxes. We got to look at your net. We got to, you speak a language to them. To you, it's second nature because you're in the industry. You know what's going on there. The person in front of you, the client, they don't speak that language. And so they get lost, and they 100% are trusting you as the professional to not only move with the transaction in a fiduciary responsibility, but to know what the heck you're talking about, because I don't know what I'm talking about as the client. I don't understand, and so I don't want my students to go into that situation and not know things. I want them to at least say, I know what you're talking about. I understand that word. I remember what that word means. I'm going to trust you, the professional, to do the work, but at least we can speak the same language. And that's a completely different ballgame.
That is so cool. So if we wanted to find you and your show, where would we go to do that?
You can find us at Business Bros Pod on any of the social media platforms, even on TikTok, ladies and gentlemen. We're on there having some fun every once in a while. But at Business Bros Pod.
Can you say that again? I kind of blanked out a little.
Yeah, at Business Bros Pod, P-O-D.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for being on today. This was really beneficial.
Of course. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to having you on our show.
I know. I can't wait.